Welcome to FinTech Fun Talks with Copper Canvas Ads Agency. And our special guest today is Matt Brannon, and he is a director at Wachsman. And that is a PR firm, and they have 10 years experience in the crypto world and worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. And they specialize in media relations and brand building. And so, Matt, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So we're ready to just jump right in. Matt has so much experience in the crypto world, and I know that that is something that a lot of people have questions about, maybe are interested in dabbling in or jumping right into. And I think now is an interesting time, more so than ever. And so we're going to jump into some of those things and some of the reasons why. So, Matt, let's start with this. How have you seen the crypto space change over the past several years?
God, yeah, it's been a real sea change, especially, I mean, over the past, I would say, couple months since this administration has stepped in, has been kind of the biggest change. But it's been, the crypto cycle is kind of always at the mercy of these extreme volatile ups and downs, for better or for worse. It's one of those things that, I think attracts a lot of people to the space because, the numbers are so impressive. But it's also easy to kind of, as you live by those numbers, you tend to die by them as well. So, we got through kind of a extended bear cycle, which was kicked off. I've been at Waxman for about 2.5 years now. It was kind of right when the Sam Bankman-Fried FTX saga was kind of unfolding, and that was kicking off the bear market. So, I've seen that slow time, which, a lot of building was going on, but unfortunately, there was also a lot of uncertainty in the industry about, regulatory areas. SEC was sort of on a mission to shut down a lot of places. There was a lot of fear in the industry of like, can we legally be based out of the US at this point? Do we have to move to friendlier locales? So yeah, a lot of uncertainty. And then more recently, with the Trump administration coming in, there was a lot of talk during the campaign of, what he would kind of bring as far as opening things up and acceptance of the crypto sphere. And by all accounts, like over the first couple months here, there has been a much friendlier take on it. Earlier this week, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, the Blockworks conference in New York, the Digital Asset Summit, he addressed the crowd there, which is the first time that a sitting president has addressed a crypto conference.
Ah, it is interesting, right? Because we're only in March. It's only been a few months, but to see such a drastic change in the way things are happening, I think it's really telling. And to see what happens within the next, 3.5 years, whatever it ends up being. Do you have any insight into what you expect might happen?
Well, I mean, I have been close to people that are kind of involved in the decision making process, so I get little dribs and drabs kind of from them. But I mean, I think that things like the crypto reserve, which initially everybody thought was going to be just Bitcoin in there. Now it's not even, it's a number of crypto assets included beyond Bitcoin, kind of in that bucket. Just the fact I think that the US government is kind of seeing crypto assets in that light of like, this is something that we want to hold in a reserve form. In the past, what had been done is during seizures for a variety of reasons, whenever the US government would seize Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, they would tend to just liquidate it immediately and dump it on the market, which, for particularly assets with smaller market caps, that's going to have like a pretty big effect on, kind of rocking the price. I mean, I think just from a market perspective, the fact that, it's not going to be dumped onto the open market is big. The fact that they see the promise of kind of what could have been, had we not liquidated these thousands of Bitcoin back in 2016, if we had held on to them, we're talking about, a pretty significant chunk of change for, government coffers.
So we're seeing a live and learn scenario and hopefully some different action being taken as we move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, I mean, I think just the fact that it legitimizes crypto, the fact that the president has a meme coin, which,
Right.
there's a lot of different takes on that. The fact that he is in that world and kind of sees the promise of it, I think, legitimizes it to an extent that
How
just
do you see
wasn't
that
there.
playing out with adoption?
With adoption, I mean, I think it opens up to a different audience. Going back to like early days of crypto, it was a very fringe, very libertarian roots to, just crypto in general, highly technical. A lot of that remains, but a lot of it is just accessible in a way that is, wasn't in the past. I mean, I've been in Bitcoin going back a few years, and I remember back when it was early days, trying to explain it to people. It wasn't even that they wouldn't take you seriously. It was just like they would just laugh at you. So I think that there's kind of, especially with things like, Bitcoin has kind of garnered a reputation now of being like the staunch, reliable cryptocurrency where people don't roll their eyes at it anymore. They realize I probably should have some kind of exposure to this asset. It would probably make sense to hedge for whatever happens in, macro economy.
Absolutely. What advice would you give to someone who is new to it and wanting to enter the space and invest? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certain it's overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people when they first get in and start to try to wrap their minds around this because there's so many coins. There's so many coins that look similar to each other. There's so many ecosystem L1s, L2s, like what is going to have value. Yeah, I don't want to give anybody financial advice, but I always, recommend Bitcoin above all else, just because to me it's been proven for the longest. It's completely decentralized, but you've got a lot of other coins that hold specific value and do things very well. So I would say look into some of these ecosystems. There's, a lot of starter videos. There's a lot of information out there. We have LLMs at our fingertips now where we can just kind of ask questions when we don't understand. That can kind of explain, how things like tokenomics work, for a coin. Is it a deflationary currency? Is it, is this the kind of thing where the founders have pre-printed, X amount of coins that are sitting on them, and at any moment they could just kind of rug pull the market and, cash out. I think looking at longevity of coins and projects is important. If somebody's been around through multiple cycles, and they've kind of proven themselves, they have an established community, open source information that's out there, so, it can be vetted. I understand that, normal people aren't going to go in there and, vet software, but if it is open source, there's, big communities that are big into looking into these things and pointing out of like there's some red flags here that people should be aware of.
There's a reason to vet it. It's people's money on the line in one way or another. And so it does make sense. And I'm thinking about the way it is perceived. We've talked about this a little bit already, but I want to know from your perspective how media coverage and public perception of blockchain and crypto has evolved. What have you seen over the past 10 years during your time in this role?
I've been in PR for 15 years. And I've been kind of in the hobbyist in crypto for probably 7 or 8 years, but in crypto, blockchain, Web3 media for about the past 3 years. So, I mean, media is tricky. There's a really good kind of fully fledged vertical crypto, series of publications, which get it. They understand it's not a hard sell. With mainstream, it can be a little bit of a mixed bag to try to break through. I think that there's, for reporters that might not necessarily be on like the crypto beat, this isn't something that they're covering day in and day out. It's just, maybe they're in fintech or they're in finance and it's, they see it on like their periphery, especially when there's big rises and big drops on the other side. Um, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of bad actors in this space, very high profile cases. And all of these tend to like when they pile up and you have three, four, five, six big high profile rug pulls, that's going to tend to leave like a bad taste in a reporter's mouth. They remember these things and they're very hesitant to kind of report on them even when they're established, solid projects, because no reporter wants to stick their neck out and do a profile piece on a company. And then 6 months later, all of a sudden, when everyone's doing the post-mortem on it, they've got this glowing article about them. So I think it's in the back of their heads to some extent. I also have noticed that when the price is going up, coverage tends to be more favorable in general and easier to land coverage from the media relations standpoint. When you're deep in the bear market, it's like crypto, isn't that dead? Didn't that die a couple of years ago? Yeah. And
Uh,
then all of a sudden it comes back and they're like, oh, it's still around. All right. It's
yeah.
died many, many, many times. Websites that are dedicated to documenting all the times that it's been called dead.
Yet how many times has it shown, "No, I'm still here, we're coming
Still
back
here.
stronger," and then also building, like you had mentioned, there will be build those regulations around it and the things that need to happen to show people it can be trusted or how to trust it, because there will always be fraud. Whenever money is involved in anything, there will always be fraud, but there will be ways that you can know, "Yes, I can trust this. I can enter into the space in this way." So, yeah, it's a really interesting thing to watch to see that it bounces back again and again. I won't lie, when I first heard about crypto, I'm like, no, this is not
Most
going to
people's
stick
first
around. What
reaction
is this
is,
weird
"Wait a
thing?
minute, I can't hold it.
Yeah.
How do I
Like
know I
it
haven't?" But that's the thing, I mean, you should be I mean, it's everything, when you hold Bitcoin, like, it's you can cryptographically prove ownership of, owning that you've got your seed phrase and you own your Bitcoin. With all of this, the whole point with crypto when it started was to get rid of the idea of trust. You don't need to trust somebody. One of the reasons that banks are as successful as they are is because we tend to trust them. So if I'm trying to wire money to you, like I trust the bank is going to get it from one place to the other. But if you're trying to like usher in this era of decentralized finance, even though banks are now getting involved in decentralized finance a lot more bigger fintech names, the idea should be you don't need them and you can interact and do business with people internationally and not need to trust them because there's safeguards in place through this cryptocurrency. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's a matter of this is technology that's still finding its footing and working itself out, and it's not perfect yet. And I think there's a lot of issues, especially in things like user experience, user interfaces, that can make it a lot easier, a lot more less daunting for people that are just getting involved. And like anything, I mean, I think it's like Web 2 technology when it really kind of started taking off is when all of that framework disappeared and you don't have to understand, like what servers you're connecting to or anything like that. It's happening invisibly under the surface and you as a user just go on, you use it, it works, it's magic, and we don't have to worry about it. So I think that's and there's a lot of people working on that problem in crypto. So I think it's when it started, it was a lot of developers and cryptographers. These aren't the kind of people that are accustomed to building really usable, custom, like sleek customer experiences. So, as it grows, funding grows, they're able to start bringing in PR agencies, marketing agencies, graphic designers, this group that this is what they did and they cut their teeth in Web 2 and now they want to kind of bring it to Web 3.
And that's the stage where it really becomes easy for, let's call us everyday people, to adopt it because it's the same as any technology. Like when it's new, you've got your early adopters. They're comfortable getting in when things aren't streamlined and clear. But yeah, you do need to make some of those refining changes and updates. And I think that there will always be the need for that whenever you're in technology because things change so fast and improve. And so it just continues to go. I'll be interested to see what we see happen with crypto in the next 2, 5, 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's just going to get easier and easier.
Yeah, well, you would know. And you've seen it become easier as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Firsthand, I've seen it become a lot easier. I remember when I first got into crypto, when you wanted a wallet that wasn't on a centralized exchange, you would have a paper wallet. You would print out this paper wallet and you would transfer your Bitcoin or, whatever to there. That still exists to some extent today, but now you have hardware wallets and, you know, dexes and all kinds of places where you can hold your
A
money.
lot more options for sure. I wanted to know, based on your experience, let's look at traditional companies who maybe are currently only taking traditional payment methods, ACH, credit. When does it make sense for them to incorporate blockchain or crypto components into their business model?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky and it's daunting for them as well. But probably more so because you're talking about you're staking your business on this. So, this is a pretty big decision. I think a lot of times when crypto is really hot and it's like a buzzword and the price is high, people kind of try to like shoehorn it in. It's like, well, how can you know, can I have a coin with my business? Can I like do a tokenization here of something? Could I, do whatever? And that's not usually an advisable way to do it. It's kind of like trying to force it into this, area where you may or may not have a reason to actually implement it. I think that it's going to make more sense for, if you look at one of the company, I used to do a lot of work for logistics companies, anything that works on some kind of a ledger as logistics technically will, I mean, is such a intuitive blockchain type thing because blockchain is ultimately, a public decentralized ledger. So, for them, it was kind of a no brainer. And a lot of them jumped in as like some of the first outside of crypto companies to take advantage of the technology. I think that for a lot of companies, it's tough to even do based on the lack of clarity around legality in the US. So I think probably step one is have the legal team look at it and see if this is actually something that can be done. I think that one of the more interesting areas of crypto right now is the idea of tokenization and real world assets. And just the idea there of like you can tokenize whatever. I mean, you can tokenize something and put it onto the blockchain, and then people can buy portions of that thing. So I mean, like you could do that with something real. I mean, you could do that with coffee mug. I'd say, would you like to buy 1/8 of this coffee mug?
Portion. Yeah.
Or you can do it with some more like traditional financial instruments. So you're seeing a lot of like the banks, you've BlackRock, you have all kinds of places that are jumping in with things that will look very familiar, like overnight T-bills, but now it's overnight tokenized T-bills. So ways to kind of get yield on things, ways to get access to financial instruments that may not have been available for, to sell these financial instruments to a wider audience. It opens up a lot of avenues. There's also, I think, concerns there because verification continues to be an issue of, okay, you've now bought 1/8 of my coffee mug. You're the owner of that. It's tokenized, right? But how do you know that I didn't drop my coffee mug and break it? Or, I
Right.
didn't sell it to my neighbor, but yet you have not received any kind of, you know,
It's not a
compensation.
physical good. It's not like my
Right. So
property
what's
that I
how are
own
you
here.
verifying that that it's there? So there's a lot of things that are being done with that right now. I'm working with a company called TrueBit that's getting ready to launch a public beta. Well, shout out to them on verification. So I think that, you've got things like ZK proofs, you've got interactive proofs, you've got lots of different ways to do this. So that will come along and like solutions will make it a little bit more tangible. But there's a lot of interest in this from more traditional finance type institutions.
Which is
Be a
amazing to
big
see.
area of growth to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's amazing to see that at this point and to watch and see how they will adopt it and how they will implement it. Do you feel like there are any market segments right now that if they came to you and said, "Hey, I'm ready to implement this," that you would say, "This is not for you just yet. You've got to wait for X, Y, and Z to happen."
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on the application. I think that like probably a good example of that would be people that see the success of launching their own token and just want to emulate that for like a money generating event. It's not so easy to create a token. You can, if you do it wrong, you could be setting yourself up for security issues. And it could also just like leave a very bad taste in the mouth of customers. It can be, a little bit brand poisoning if it looks like, why are you doing a token generating event? Like there's no utility for this token. So if there's a difference between like, meme coins that the community just kind of jumps on and they're like a viral moment versus, a major established company deciding to launch a token. But to me, if you're a company launching a token, like there should be some kind of a sense of like this grants ownership in the company. It's almost like shares that probably there's some legality involved there that you have to call on the lawyer specialists in that. But also, like, what's the point? Like, does it grant me some kind of access that I didn't have before? Does it give me, some kind of a benefit, almost like a rehashing of the old loyalty, cards,
Yes,
every
right.
store of like, is there some kind of a benefit to holding this? Because in essence, by buying it, I'm investing in your company. So, is there, beyond just like potential incremental growth, does it open some gates for me?
What is the benefit to make
Right.
it a win-win? Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see common misconceptions portrayed in mainstream media in how blockchain is represented?
All the time. Yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, I think probably the biggest is that just crypto in general, like, is tied to illegal activity. It's yes, you can, send crypto. It is there are some that are a little bit more on the private side, but for the most part, very traceable. Like Bitcoin is one of the much more traceable than cash. So fiat cash money has been involved in crime for a long, long, long time. So I think that's a big one. A lot of times the sense of like blockchain equals Bitcoin, which is not true. I mean, it's kind of the crypto that comes to mind quickest for most people, but it's a much bigger ecosystem than that.
Growing every day, I would
It
say.
really is growing every day, and I think that, yeah, I mean, I think given the legal clarity that we talked about before, that's just gonna continue to mount. I think that just given the high profile nature of some of the cases, I mean, the FTX one was really a game changer for the way that kind of people see crypto. At that time, it was a major black eye for the industry, just because of the fact that Sam Bankman-Fried was so integrated into traditional finance and politics. I mean, he was kind of a token guy for crypto in any kind of big setting DC. So, I think that a lot of people were taken aback when that happened. But I also think that the benefit of something like that happening is it puts you a little bit more on guard for kind of what to look out for in the future. And I think a lot of the mistakes that were made at FTX have kind of proven that this is something that we need to look out for as an industry. And particularly investors or people that are getting into partnerships with companies have to look at the way that they're doing custody and should be looking for kind of transparent. It's one of the nice things about crypto is it can be, as transparent as you want to allow it to be. If you're a company that's seeking partnerships and is kind of in this public light, I think having your coffers on display is just going to make everybody a little bit more comfortable. It can show that you're doing the right thing, and it can really just relax the industry as a whole, and a lot of the tension that's kind of inherently built up in this area.
That makes a lot of sense. As an individual, if I see that a company is being more transparent than another, that's the one I'm going to go with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're always looking for that as a savvy consumer. I think it just is, a smart business decision. And when you're talking about stakes that are as high as what we're talking about here with some of these companies, I mean, yeah, that's going to be kind of a deal breaker to me as an investor if I can't have any kind of insight into what's going on, kind of how the sausage is being made.
Let's talk about the global landscape with crypto. Obviously, this is something that has been picked up a lot more in countries outside of the United States versus the US. We're seeing that change. We're seeing probably big growth during this administration. And so, tell me a little bit about what you've been seeing in the rest of the world versus the US and what it might look like when things advance more in the US.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think that you really, when you look like region to region, country by country, you can see kind of the differences in what different kind of administrations and like friendliness to crypto, what it means to where it's grown, because you really have, and crypto is global, right? I mean, it's supposed to be, that's one of the whole points of it is, it's cross border. I could send to, my brother-in-law in Slovakia, as quickly as, I send it to somebody down the street without having to go through banks and things. So, it's going to function better, as planned when it is a globally connected ecosystem where everybody's allowed to partake in. But some areas have been quicker to get on this bandwagon than others. You look at places like, I mean, Asia in general has really been forward thinking on crypto. Some places have kind of waffled back and forth. China has historically been kind of seesawing depending on which way the wind is blowing for things. But for the most part, I mean, Asia has been incredibly crypto friendly. And now you kind of see some of the bigger companies, even from other places in the world, moving over there. A lot of them now moving back to the US. And it seems like climate is getting better here. But at this point, kind of what's done is done. So it's, that's probably crypto home right now more than elsewhere. Just based on the fact that there's been that friendliness. And then you look at, I think, the different regions where it's not so much of like a luxury of let's play with this cool new toy, but where it's more of like a necessity. Places where hyperinflation have become like a reality. You look at somewhere like Venezuela, various places in Africa where the money is so devalued for a number of reasons. Maybe it's printing or just fiscal policies, macroeconomics, but if you don't want your dollar to be completely devalued, like you've got to put it into something else. Like, if this is happening here, maybe I need to grab euros or I need to grab Canadian dollars. So, this is something where, some of that liquidity for other currencies isn't accessible to someone that's living there. If they have an internet connection and a bank account that has not been frozen yet, because I know that's in some of those places, it becomes really difficult to move your money. It's, a way for them to stabilize a little bit and protect against, all of a sudden things, you see the walking with the wheelbarrow full of money to go get, a carton of eggs. So I think that's kind of the areas where crypto plays like a very serious use case for stabilization.
Any additional comments or ideas on cross-border payments?
Yeah, I mean, one of the initial premises behind Bitcoin, one of the kind of initial promises was remittances. You go work abroad, and I don't know if you ever send money through like Western Union or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very expensive.
it is. And yet sometimes it's the only way, or it has been the only
Yeah, I mean,
way.
classically, it was the only way that if you need to send money, to somebody in Italy tomorrow, like, that's you got to go through Western Union. I don't want to besmirch Western Union's a good name, but it's very
No, they
expensive.
they served a purpose for
Yeah, well, they made
sure.
their money on it for a long time, so
Yeah,
I'm sure they did just fine. So
yeah,
the idea of, it takes a long time. You have to physically find a place to send it, or you're sending this through the mail, which is not a good idea.
yeah.
But it was very difficult to send money. You could go do a bank transfer. You're looking at several days there. Also, big fees attached to it. Very little opportunity to send money, especially for somebody if you were, maybe an immigrant somewhere. And the whole point of being, is to work abroad, send money home. You're doing it regularly. It's a big chunk of what might already be kind of a small paycheck to begin with. So, um, the whole idea with Bitcoin was this is going to be a great way to kind of circumvent this and create a new way to send money across borders instantaneously. Not actually instantaneous, but it's for all intents and purposes comparatively. And a lot of the other blockchains are what you would call instantaneous. Bitcoin's a little slower because of the way the block sizes move. But that's a real life solution for a lot of people out there. And I don't know how many actually take advantage of it because like we talked about
Right?
before, it's a daunting and tricky thing if you aren't familiar with it. But there's a lot of exchanges out there that have made things pretty seamless. I'll let people look around for themselves. Being in the industry that I'm in, I can't give free plugs, but there's some big ones out there.
There'll be different solutions that work better for different people and different situations as well. So that makes sense. But
Yeah, I mean, for a
um,
person, it's going to be a lot different than a business. I mean, if you're an institution, and you're looking to get into this, you'd probably be working with a different exchange than you would if you were just doing it on a personal level. So I think that's something to consider for, anybody that's listening that is trying to decide, well, who do I partner with? Because you need like a series of partners. How am I going to custody this crypto? How am I going to buy it? How am I going to sell it? If that is a concern, I mean, I think that there are different considerations there depending on who you are.
as we wrap up, I have one final question for you. If you could fix one problem in the industry immediately without any barriers, because I know that they're always there, what would that be?
Man, just one? I have like
Just
five. I
one.
think if you'd asked me 6 months ago, it would be legal clarity.
Mm,
And I think I don't have to wish for that now because I think that that's the wheels are in motion there. I think that's happening. I think it would be that we could demystify some of this stuff for a wider audience because I don't think it's right that so many people seem cut off from this information just because it feels unobtainable. And I think that's probably people like me and you as marketers and communication people. It's our job to try to make that a little bit more accessible to them and break down these kind of hardcore technical concepts in a way that they can wrap their minds around because nobody's gonna, if this is just something you're seeing in passing, it's rare that you're like, let me, spend 6 hours researching this unless it really grabs you. So I think we have to grab people a little bit more and show them kind of what the benefits are to them because that's kind of where it starts. It's like, well, how does this affect me? Can it help me financially? And do that in a way that's not disingenuous and not for the wrong reasons, like trying to sell a coin, but for actually educating them in a way that, finding technology that could be useful for them in their lives.
and as you were saying that, I was thinking, so it really kind of is like getting more reporters. We just need to
Yeah, I
get the
guess
word
so. Yeah.
out there.
Maybe that is my wish. Let's go with that. More reporters. More reporters.
Yeah, I do get it. Like, let's get the message out. The education component, I think, is a barrier for a lot of people. And let's be honest, we want to take the path of least resistance in a lot of ways, where if I'm going to make a purchase or invest in something, I'll take the easier path in the ways that I know until, like you said, I know the benefits of something better. I know how to simply do it, all of the steps that need to be taken. Yeah, education really is a big component. And so hopefully your wisdom and getting this message out will help with some of those things.
Making it happen right now. Well, no, I
That's
think there's a
right.
lot more people kind of getting into the space too. So I think there's going to be a lot more voices, a lot more people kind of beating that drum and saying it in a way that people will be able to grab.
And you have the word of mouth and just the talking to your neighbors and your friends type of situations that come up where you help people get in as well. So yeah, we'll be keeping our eye on crypto for sure over these next few years. And Matt, we really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts and experience. It's been very helpful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching our podcast today. I'm Kristen. I'm the owner of Copper Canvas Ads Agency and the host of FinTech Fun Talks. Copper Canvas Ads Agency is a growth partner helping fintech companies grow and scale their business within a 12-month period. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I've seen how saturated this market is and how difficult it can be to make your solution stand out in a really crowded market. And so that is what we are here to do, to partner with you, understand where your gaps are, and help create a plan to fill those gaps and really help you increase your growth and your revenue in that 12-month period. If you're interested, please go to our website, coppercanvasadsagency.com, and you can book a call to speak with me right there on the website. And I look forward to talking to you soon.